Call to order the Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, November 15th, 2018. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Harlicker, please call the roll.
Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Knobloch.
Here.
Commissioner Heikola.
Here.
Commissioner Casey.
Here.
Commissioner Schmolke.
Here.
Commissioner Stevenson.
Here.
And Chair Schwartz.
Here. Our first order of business this evening is to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Heikola, second by Stevens. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have approval of our minutes from our October 18th meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey.
I move that we approve the minutes from the October 18th meeting. Second.
Motion by Casey, second by Schmolke. Any discussion, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Abstention?
Motion carries with one abstention, Commissioner Stevens. First order of new business for the evening is planning case 18-19, a preliminary plat, Vale Street and Coon Rapids Boulevard, Green Partnership. Mr. Harlicker.
So, Chair and Commissioners, the first item tonight, get the PowerPoint up, is a preliminary plat of approximately 10 acres into 2 lots and right-of-way for Coon Rapids Boulevard. This is the area that's the subject of the preliminary plat. Coon Rapids Boulevard, Vale Street, Coon Rapids Boulevard extension. What is being proposed is to take that approximately 10 acres and split it into a developable piece that's 5.18 acres and street right-of-way, which is this area down in here, approximately 4.84 acres. This will be right-of-way for Coon Rapids Boulevard. We've got right-of-way up here for Vale Street, and then the 2 lots. The reason this is being split into 2 lots and not one has to do with the legal descriptions of the property. Excuse me. One lot is Torrens, the other has an abstract legal description, and the 2 lots can't be combined as one lot. That's why you're seeing Lot 1 and Lot 1A. Also in the plat here are right-of-ways for 3 streets that were never developed. And this was part of the plat called Coon Grove, which was approved back in 1958. The streets are Ripple Lane, Oak Street, and Brookview Place. The right-of-ways for those streets will have to be vacated by the city prior to releasing the plat for recording. There's some park dedication that's due as part of the plat. When these lots were platted back in 1948 as part of an auditor subdivision, and the Coon Grove plat, park dedication was not collected at that time. So park dedication for the developable piece, the 5.18 acres, is due in the amount of $4,000 per acre, which is the current park dedication fee for industrial land. And that comes to about $20,720. With that, staff is recommending approval of the preliminary plat with the 4 conditions in the staff report. All comments of the Anoka County Highway Department be addressed because it is along Coon Rapids Boulevard. All comments of the city engineer be addressed. The street right-of-ways for Ripple Lane, Oak Street, and Brookview Place be vacated, and park dedication be paid prior to releasing the plat for recording.
Thank you, Mr. Harlicker. Commission, any questions from Mr. Harlicker? Hearing none, is there anything petitioner needs to add at this time?
Anything on the plat? Yeah.
Please come up to the microphone, give your name and address, please, for the record.
Al Taft, 2419 Hansted Road in Eau Claire. I just wanted to point out on the plat that this is obviously going to be one project, and we're reducing the number of lots to as few as possible, but there's two sellers. And if you can see it on the overhead, can they see that?
Yeah, they've got this.
Okay, they're kind of triangular lots, very difficult to develop by themselves individually.
Yeah, this would be one.
Yeah, there you go.
Those two there, and then this piece here.
All right, I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. All right, we need to have a public hearing on this matter, so at this time I will open a public hearing in planning case 18-19, a preliminary plat for Vale Street and Coon Rapids Boulevard. Anyone here wishing to speak to the public hearing? Anyone wish to speak at the public hearing? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Commission.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stevenson.
I move that in planning case 18-19, the planning commission recommend approval of the preliminary plat for the storage place with the conditions stated in the staff report.
Second.
Motion by Stevenson, second by Stevens. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This is a recommendation by the Planning Commission and a decision by the City Council at their December 4th meeting. Our second case for the evening, Planning Case 18-18, a conditional use permit for a self-storage facility at Vale Street, Coon Rapids Boulevard, Green Partnership. Mr. Harlicker.
Yeah, Chair and Commissioners, maybe just an overview of how we're going to proceed with this application. I think what we'd like to do is have an initial presentation by staff and the applicant, just touching on what the project is about. They've got material boards here, and we can give you a general overview of the project. Following that, we'll have a discussion specific to the conditional use permit and hold a public hearing for that. Then following the public hearing, we'll hold a discussion specific to the site plan and have a public hearing for that also.
Very good.
All right, and the project involves a 66,400 square foot self-storage facility. The developable piece part of the parcel is outlined here, again with Vale Street, Coon Rapids Boulevard Extension, and Coon Rapids Boulevard. Surrounding land uses include the apartment buildings here, self-storage facility, I believe that's CenterPoint Energy gas, and then Met Council lift station. This here is Alflin Park with the clay hall, and this area in here is the east end of the Port Riverwalk development, which will be a single-family residential development encompassing most of Port Riverwalk. And this was the east end of that project. Here's the site plan. It's a series of single-story storage buildings. There's 10 of them. They range in size from about 4,000 square feet. These in here are about 6,000 up to 8,800. One is 9,200. So the bigger buildings are down at this end where the property is a little wider. They range in length from 100 feet, I believe it's here about 160, and then these up here in the range from 210, 230, and 220. Each of the buildings are 40 feet wide. The drive aisles between the buildings vary from somewhere around 29 or 30 feet down to a narrowest point where it's at 24 feet. You can see the buildings are relatively perpendicular. to Coon Rapids Boulevard. Main entrance, only entrance into the site is off of Vale Street here. This point down here is an emergency access off the bulb of the cul-de-sac here. The area site will be fenced. There's a 6-foot-high brown vinyl privacy fence along here, and then the rest of the site will be a 6-foot-high vinyl-coated chain link fence. Stormwater management will occur down in this corner here. Kind of shows that the grading plan here. Again, it drops off rather sharply to the drainage ponds in this area here. And again, there's kind of a minor drop off at this end here. Water will flow down through the site and into the ponds, going in this direction. Landscape plan, excuse me. Landscape plan complies with city code requirements. You've got overstory trees planted 25 feet on center along Coon Rapids Boulevard, interspersed with some shrubs. Along Vale Street, trees are planted at 40 feet on center. They include a hedge along here, as well as along Vale Street. And then again, you've got the privacy fence along here. Landscaping internal to the site is really focused in the pond area here, at the top of the pond. There's very little landscaping going down to the slope. As you can see from the grading plan, there is kind of a plateau here where there might be an opportunity to do some additional plantings to break it up. We'd want to see specifically what sort of vegetation they're proposing for the ponds. I don't believe they're going to be wet year-round, so we'll need to do some sort of plantings in there to stabilize the soil. Here are the building elevations. This elevation here is the one at the, I would call it I suppose the west end. It's this building here. And you can see it. The materials are a mix of split face block around the doors. On the ends, it's a face brick. The colors of the block and the brick will match. The brown areas here are lap siding, and then you've got the shingle roof. The buildings, some of the buildings have roof lines broken up with the dormers. The ends of the buildings do have the gables sticking out from the end. There is a tower on the corner of this building here, about this location. That's building 1. These buildings here, the lower one is 2, 6, and 8. Again, same material, but you notice the detailing on the long sides of the building is lacking, as it is on this one here. And these are buildings 3, 4, and 5. They're more internal to the site, 3 right in through here. Again, you've got the gable on the ends, but it does kind of lack the bump outs that these buildings have. And again, there's on this building here, which is 3, it does have one dormer up here, and that's on both sides. These sides here are lack the detail. And then on building 7, 9, and 10, these are 7 and 9. Again, these are very similar to these buildings here, except for the fact that on the ends, they do have the more detailing with the gables. And then this is building 10, which is the small one. Again, this is the west elevation. They've got some breaking up of the long side here. And this is the end that faces Coon Rapids Boulevard. This is the end that faces Vale Street. then again, it's lacking details here. That's my general overview of the site plan. The applicant is here, he can add to the presentation and go into more detail about the building materials.
Thank you, Mr. Harlicker. Commission, any questions of Mr. Harlicker at this time? Okay, if the petitioner would like to come up and give a presentation, please. Again, state your name for the record.
Al Taft. Well, Mr. Harlicker has summarized things fairly well. I think you get an idea of what the property is all about. The most focal part of the project is building number 1 that's at the far west end of the site plan, and hence the one that is exhibiting the most variation in lines and those kinds of things. The other buildings that, as you continue progressively to the east or to the south, have fewer of those details. They've got the expressions on the ends of the buildings. The interior sides of those buildings, the roof lines, won't be visible, and hence we didn't think it necessary to waste the money on dormers that you won't see from any of the streets. The only people who would see those would be tenants looking for their unit, which, you know, I don't really think that's significant to them. Building, I think it's 3 on the site plan, has got a little bit more definition on the east side of it. Reason being, that's the building that's the last building in line before the property steps back a few feet. So that building has, if you were on the same elevation as that building, you'd see that. Now, one thing you probably are aware of is that there's a fair grade difference between Coon Rapids Boulevard and the site. On the far west end, it's roughly 15 feet, I think, and it does decrease as you go to the east. And I'm not sure what it is at the east end, but keep in mind that you've got someplace, there will be an opaque fence 6 feet tall near the top of that hill, okay? So your line of sight from, I should get by the mic maybe. Your line of sight from sitting in a car, driving down the road, will be looking up the hill, over a fence, and then back 30 or whatever feet it is from there to, I think it's more than that, from there to the building. So some of these buildings will totally disappear. Some of them you will see the tops, peaks of the gables. I don't think you're going to see the roofs of any of these buildings from Coon Rapids Boulevard. The other thing I think that is significant here is that this site is at a corner, not a corner, a curve in Coon Rapids Boulevard, and where East River Road hooks in underneath it. So you've got merging traffic, you've got people navigating a turn, and you know, I think they're busy enough driving their vehicles that they're probably not paying a lot of attention to that site anyway. But if they are, what they're going to see is this fence and the landscaping, which at that point is on the outside of the fence. So we're trying to make a nice presentation to the street, give it some curb appeal, but you're not going to get much of any look at the buildings.
You want to go in a little more detail about, excuse me, building materials and explain that?
Sure. The ends of the buildings are going to be one of these bricks. There's one of your box elder bugs. These are what the overhead doors will look like. The doors on the on the Coon Rapids Boulevard end of the building are individual service doors. They're not overhead doors. This siding material will be in the gables, and there's some roofing material around the corner there, shingles. So it'll be a combination of brick on the ends, split face block on the sides where the doors aren't, in between them, and some siding in the gables. Something else I think is worth noting here, as far as the conditional use permit is concerned, is that these properties have been vacant for, well, in the case of the one that's closest to the corner, about 40 years. Well, forever really, but they've owned it for about 40 years. And the one to the east, since the early 90s or something like that, that it has been undeveloped. So, you know, nothing else has apparently found the site desirable enough to buy it and get city approval to get done. We're hoping that our project is attractive enough to meet that standard, keeping in mind that this property is zoned industrial. We wouldn't be here with the conditional use permit if it weren't for the River Rapids Overlay District, which brings it to a different standard. So I think we're trying to accomplish meeting those standards.
Pardon me, did you say 4 years, or you said
40.
40?
40.
Thank you.
It's a long time. Conditional use
When we
permit.
get into that, we'll do that as a separate,
This?
yeah, the conditional use.
Oh, okay.
We'll get into that in a moment. Does the commission have any questions specific to the overview of the project, of the applicant or myself?
Commission?
Chair Schwartz, I have one question.
Commissioner Knobloch?
Are there any other examples or facilities that you have that are comparable to your proposed project in the cities? Or in the
I'm not
area?
personally aware of them. Our client does not have another one in the cities. His architect has done some other ones in the Twin Cities, but I couldn't tell you what they are.
Okay, well, thanks.
And Commissioner, any other questions? All right, thank you. We need to have a public hearing then for this matter?
Chair, maybe I could go through the staff report first, and then we'll have
Oh, certainly, I'm sorry.
the public
Mr. Hart.
hearing. At this point, I'd like to go through the conditions required for conditional use permit. As the applicant indicated, since this is in the River Rapids Overlay District, code requires that it needs a conditional use permit in this district. In looking at this project, we compared it to the general conditional use permit standards found in section 304.3, as well as the conditional use permit standards that are specific to the River Rapids Overlay District. We'd like to go through the general conditional use permit standards first. The first one is that the use shall be in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan. Staff does not believe that it meets that standard with respect to the Coon Rapids Boulevard Framework Plan. That plan was adopted as part of the city's comprehensive plan back in 2000, and it is still in the current plan. And as part of that, we looked at the goals and policies of the framework plan and focused on 3 of them that relate to areas in between the ports. The first one is the land use and development, that it concentrate businesses in a limited number of nodes with residential, institutional, and open space uses between the nodes. This project is between Port Evergreen and Port Riverwalk, excuse me. The proposed use is neither residential nor institutional, and it is not an office or commercial use that might promote interaction between residents. The second one is a sense of place. The improvements along the corridor should be support a sense of community, encourage interaction among neighbors. The proposed use does not support that sense of community or encourage interaction among neighbors. The proposed use will have a limited number of employees with limited access and therefore a limited opportunity for interaction. And the third one was good design and blight. The corridor serves as a gateway to the surrounding neighborhoods and provides a first impression. The River Rapids Overlay District guidelines are established to support the concept of creating a positive first impression coming into the city. The proposed use does not meet the conditional use permits of the overlay district, nor does it meet all the design guidelines. Now the standards that are specific to the River Rapids Overlay District. The first one is that no conditional use permit may be granted unless the applicant demonstrates, there's 4 criteria that are listed there. The first one is to advance the intent of the River Rapids Overlay District. This section intends to promote the health, safety, public welfare through the adoption of official overlay controls that encourage compact, vigorous, mixed-use development tied to a common theme that encompasses the heritage and qualities of the Mississippi River. This proposal does not encourage compact, vigorous, mixed-use development. It's a single-use project consisting of 10 one-story buildings spread out over 5 acres. The second one is that it's a linear system of ports will promote clustering of commercial uses. Varied density residential throughout the district, and especially between the ports, will establish a level of vitality and intensity. The area between the ports, uses should serve the needs of nearby neighborhoods. Development should foster a sense of community, and it is the opportunity for people to travel comfortably throughout the district, conduct business, and meet neighbors. The proposed project does not seem to meet this criteria because of the limited activity generated by the facility. It will not foster a sense of community, provide an opportunity for people to travel comfortably through the district or conduct business. The proposed use will service the nearby apartment buildings. And finally, the third one is the only mutually compatible uses will be allowed through a combination of careful planning, innovative urban design, coordinated public and private investment. Uses, building designs, placement of building edges, landscaping, parking, and walkway treatments must create a neighborhood-oriented, pedestrian-friendly environment. Again, this is really a simple series of one-story buildings that incorporate none of the enhancements that were just enumerated. The second standard is that will not interfere with port development. Again, Port Riverwalk is adjacent on the to the south in this area here, and you've got the park to the on the other side of Coon Rapids Boulevard, Elflin Park, and the clay hole, the county trail cutting across the old Coon Rapids Boulevard bridge there. Port Riverwalk has been designed as primarily residential. The city's plans for Port Riverwalk include detached single-family home development, allowing the site to be developed as a self-storage facility with limited architectural enhancements and other physical site amenities will result from the desirability of the port and the city's investments, both in here as well as future investments in the Alphalin Park. This area functions as an entry point and provides a first impression of River Rapids overlay and Port River Rock from people traveling from the east and the south. Given the site's high visibility and prominence, it's important that the development of this site reflects that priority, and the proposed project does not accomplish that. The third standard allows for the development of the property in an efficient and organized way. The proposed use does allow for this site to be developed in an efficient and well-organized way. And finally, the last criteria is that is incorporated into a plan that provides substantial site amenities, buffers, and other elements. Proposed use is incorporated into a plan that doesn't provide substantial site amenities, buffers, or other elements. Landscaping meets the code, but it does not rise to the level of substantial. There really are no site amenities as part of the project, and that therefore does not meet that standard. There are two other specific standards found in the River Rapids Overlay District. The first one is that it is not feasible to install a public sidewalk to serve the facility. And if you look on the grading plan, there is an area in this area here that is relatively flat, and it could accommodate a sidewalk from Coon Rapids Boulevard into the site. And the second standard is a facility is screened from view from Coon Rapids Boulevard. The landscape plan for this one. Proposed landscape plan and fencing, it will effectively screen the facility from Coon Rapids Boulevard. The privacy fence and the overstory trees and the shrubs will provide a buffer between Coon Rapids Boulevard and the facility. With that, staff is recommending the Planning Commission deny the request for a conditional use permit for a self-storage facility based on the findings enumerated in the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Harlicker. And Commission, any questions for Mr. Harlicker? All right, hearing done, we now will open a public hearing in planning case 18-18, a conditional use permit for a self-storage facility at Vale Street and Coon Rapids Boulevard. Anyone here wish to speak to the public hearing? Please come up to the microphone, give your name and address, please, for the record, and limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Pete Scher. 9401 73rd Avenue North is our business address. I'm representing Scher Brothers Lumber Company, Scher Limited Partnership, the owners of approximately half this property proposed to be sold. And I also believe I'm representing the Schmidt family estate, who owns the other half. I have to fix one error. You mentioned that we've owned it for 40 years. Also in attendance today, I have my father, Roger Scher, 83 years old. He corrected us. We've owned this property since before he began work at the lumberyard. So we've owned this property since 1940. Not 1970, but 1940. I don't know how long the Schmidts have owned it. I can tell you nothing has been on that property since 1940. I'm a mere 55 years old, and when I started in the business, we owned this property, and it's become one of my lifelong obligations to try to find a meaningful disposition of this vacant piece of land. And I've been working at it now, I started in 1989. Young Charlie Pfeffer is here, he's our broker. His father started working on the sale of this property with my father. Wasn't back in 1940, but probably back in the 60s at least. And so this property and the Schmitz next door, it has been there, it has been vacant, and we have tried and we have tried to find an acceptable use, and never have we achieved support of the city in finding the next meaningful use of this property. I heard the comments about this overlay district, and I think there certainly are some meaningful guidelines proposed there, but it became very clear to me that this property should not have been included in that overlay district when it was dropped upon it. It's been an industrial property and industrial zoned for as long as we remember. And as Al Taft mentioned, that industrial designation alone would not require this PUD, but because of the overlay district, it is now required. If you're familiar with the site, and I'm quite familiar, it's an island. It's surrounded by another mini warehouse place, not a very attractive, well-kept place like this would be. So I think we would buffer that nicely. It's bordered by the railroad tracks. Burlington Northern has indicated that there's 50 trains a day that come by that site. Hardly a neighborhood amenity. And then you've got the park and Coon Rapids Boulevard, which sits 15 feet below this site. I don't quite see how, in any way, shape, or form, this site, with any use, and I'd be open to suggestions, could incorporate and invigorate a neighborhood. It's an island. It sits 15 feet above. There's not a sidewalk at the beginning of the property or at the end of property, so I don't know where a said sidewalk would attach to. And all I know is I believe the highest and best use for this property would be a new, well-maintained, well-screened, and well-thought-out storage facility, which is being prepared here, or being proposed here. So we have a packet of information that we'll gladly provide you if interested with, I guess, our feelings and some of our data, including the number of folks that we've had interested in the site who have not gained the support of the city in the past, including funeral homes, the Salvation Army, another mini storage earlier on, and I could go on and on. But we've tried. We've been good stewards of the site. I'd hate to tell you how much we've paid in property taxes for this vacant piece of land. It's ridiculous, the amount of carry that we've had over those years that we've provided. And now we find an interesting, well-financed, motivated buyer, and we certainly would like to help them come up, move forward with their commercial use of the property. Probably running out of my 5 minutes. Yeah, I guess I would love to summarize our thoughts in the package that we have. The only recommendation change I'd make to that book is it's not the 70s, it's the 40s that we've owned this property for, and we'd love to put it to higher and better use. Thank you. Okay. Questions, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Scher. First, one correction for you. This is not a PUD, it's a CUP.
Excuse me.
Conditional use permit.
Excuse me.
Okay, yeah.
And was there a question? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Roger Scheer. I was the president of Scheer Brothers Lumber Company before Peter took that job over. And I followed my father. My father acquired this property as in payment of a bad debt from a fellow named Chester LaSalle in the 1940s. Chester LaSalle built cabins in northern Minnesota, and they were covered with log cabin siding. We had business then when nobody else did. But that's a long time ago. It seems to me the utility of this property for Coon Rapids has been underlooked. And because people store trailers, vans, pop-up trailers, There are other stuff that becomes messy in yards, can be stored in a place like this for the people of Coon Rapids. It's not for storage for people from far away, it's for people from here. It's for their convenience, and that's where it's going to be used. So this is a utility actually for the people of Coon Rapids to make your city better, to make your city look better. And it seems to me that that's overlooked, and it's for the convenience of all your citizens, and it pays taxes too at the same time. So I can't understand why it would not be used. It certainly is not an infringement on the use of the railroad or anything else. It's just a tax-paying entity to serve the people of Coon Rapids. Seems to me simple enough. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have any questions, please?
Nope, thank you.
Chris Keiser, 10840 Mississippi Boulevard, Coon Rapids. Just some items for consideration. I'm not necessarily for or against this site, but I am a member of the Transportation Advisory Board and the Met Council, and I see traffic pattern items coming up constantly from a safety perspective. And one of the items that both chairmen have brought up here for a storage perspective is trailers. And I don't know how many of you drive past there every day, but turning left onto that road is a perilous prospect to begin with. And nobody's hauling a trailer through there all the time, especially with the railroad bridge narrow and shorter there as well. So I would question that as a perspective as traffic flow for the boulevard right nearby there if we're going to increase long tongue traffic into that space on that, frankly, poor access from it's more than a 90-degree turn to get onto that road with an island in there as well, which could create a safety hazard for those traveling on the boulevard at 50 miles an hour, 45 if they're following the speed limit. Secondly, I think the other piece here to consider is that, as they may have mentioned, that yes, it has been vacant for a long time. Storage facilities become that, and that's all they ever can be. This is not a strip mall. This is not another commercial style building. Once it is this, it will be this in perpetuity until someone raises that space. So consider your decision carefully, because it will probably become for the next 70 years a small storage facility. Again, I'm not necessarily for or against this facility. I personally have used storage facilities in the purpose of moving in and out of my own homes. They're very useful. They can be very useful in facilitating that in and out. But I do believe that there are other considerations other than purely the materials and the buildings themselves. Any questions?
Nope, thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
I do have a question.
Commissioner Casey.
When you're talking about that turn, are you talking about the, just the right-hand turn off of Coon Rapids Boulevard traveling west?
So it'd be the right-hand turn or traffic traveling from within the city to the left-hand turn into there as well. That's about, I'm gonna say about a little over a 90-degree, maybe a 100-degree turn, which may be tight with anything. If you're carrying, say, a boat trailer, your total length there is about 45 feet. And I believe there is a concrete island there, which may catch trailers, things like that, which could cause then incidents for traffic going the opposite direction there, westbound.
So you're mainly talking within that site off Coon Rapids Boulevard Extension into Vale?
From the boulevard onto Coon Rapids
Onto
Extension, which is
Extension,
presumably where I would assume most people would be accessing this, considering Coon Rapids Boulevard is the major thoroughfare into the city. And then the only other access would be to take the extension either over to Foley through the extension or past the movie theaters there, both of which are also pretty condensed and busy intersections as well, for getting longer items in there. So site access, I believe, would be worth a consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just as a point of information, however, the county has already announced that they plan to shut down that island, preventing the left-hand turns off of eastbound Coon Rapids Boulevard. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Chair, Commission members. Charlie Pfeffer, 7200 Hemlock Lane, Suite 101, Maple Grove, 55369. That was going to be one of my points as far as the access is going to be eliminated, so it'll be minimized right in, right out. And that's happening sooner rather than later, which is another reason why we're having the conversation about the industrial use. To find something that's going to go there with that minimized access, that's commercial, or as suggested, it's an island. So when you're looking at the big picture, please look at what other uses aren't going to work there as well. And lastly, in 70 years from now, I hope we are going to be arguing about tearing down that building, because I don't want to be talking about it being still vacant land. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair Schwartz. My name is Beth Harper, 1412 Carleen Drive. And I'm an attorney at Siegel Brill, and I represent Mayflower Coon Rapids Properties. And our client owns property that is it's just southeast of the subject property that applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for. And a little bit of background, approximately 2 years ago, it's kind of been alluded to, our client was in the negotiations with a purchase agreement with the owners of the subject property with the intent to expand their operations, and they actually operate as a self-storage unit to the southeast onto this subject property. One of the contingencies of this purchase agreement, of course, was that they meet certain governmental approvals. So our client talked with the city, and the city staff basically said that, and they let them know what our plans were to do the storage facility or expand their storage facility, and that the city said, based on city ordinances and the city comprehensive plan, that essentially any application that we would submit would be denied. So based on this information provided by the city staff, it was determined that our client would not be able to meet the governmental approvals that were required under the purchase agreement, and therefore would not be able to move forward with their plans for their expansion on their self-storage facility. So fast forward to today, the applicant is essentially applying for the same use for the subject property on the same terms and conditions that our client had previously wanted to propose. So as far as we know, there's been no changes to city ordinances or the city comprehensive plan or otherwise that would allow for different findings at this time. And the city planner's recommendations show that city staff is essentially just being consistent with their previous findings by recommending denial of the request for a conditional use permit of the self-storage unit. So I won't get into details. Mr. Hutherker, explained kind of why they don't meet these requirements. But I would just like to emphasize one point regarding the city ordinance for the overlay district as it pertains to conditional uses, and for specifically for self-storage units, and that is certain conditions must be met. One of which, if it's not feasible to install a public sidewalk to serve the facility. And based on the grading plan, it is in fact feasible to install a sidewalk from Coon Rapids Boulevard along the southwest side of the site. So from a legal perspective, based on the ordinance alone, it is not possible or in fact legal for the city to grant a conditional use permit for the self-storage facility. So the reasons that the land is vacant is because of this overlay district. The city has very specific requirements of what they want to see in this area. It is the entrance, kind of the face of the city. And so the storage unit, as we have found out through our client, that is not a conforming use. So in sum, on behalf of my client, we are here to support the city planner's recommendation that the applicant's request for a conditional use permit be denied.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak public hearing? Mr. Taft, go ahead.
I can appreciate the neighbors' frustration having been through this once before. That said, our project is a new project, and I'd like to address some of the things that that are brought up as far as qualifying or disqualifying a conditional use permit. Number one, advance the intent of the section as it pertains to section 11-304.3 of the statute. It says, advance the intent of this section, okay? Well, part of the intent stated in that section is that it promote the compact, vigorous, mixed use development, including clustering of commercial development. We think our self-storage project will be a welcome service to the residents of the high-density housing that is currently in the neighborhood and proposed in the neighborhood to this, across the street. It's also contiguous to another self-storage, which aligns with the clustering goal that's stated. Our interpretation of the mixed-use development that is referred to is that the overlay district as a whole be mixed use and not that each individual site be required to be mixed use. Next point, number 2, is will not interfere with the port development. This site has remained undeveloped for, we've heard the story of how long it's been sitting there, so it's, not standing in the way of anything that I can think of. The access is poor there now, and it's getting worse. It's going to be worse with the median being closed, or median break being closed. So it's not going to be any easier to sell going forward. Our use requires very few trips per year to the site. So while we don't like the access, it's more tolerable for this kind of use. Keep in mind also that not only is it right in, right out, but you've got 2 streets merging together just before that intersection. So something low traffic going in there is far favorable to anything that would have, a grocery store, for example, would just go crazy there. Number 3, allow the development of the property in an efficient, well-organized way. I think we do that. Site plan evidence is that. Incorporates into the plan and provides substantial site amenities, buffers, and elements. We don't have a lot of amenities on the site. I'm not sure that we have any. However, this is a fenced, secure facility. People don't hang around there. We want them to come and go, do their business and leave. There isn't much reason to have, park benches and so on inside the facility. If it helps, we probably could suck the fence in a few feet along the western property line and put some benches or something on the outside of the fence in some recessed area along that to the west of the pond. That might work. As far as point B here, commercial and self-service storage facilities adjacent to Coon Rapids Boulevard can't have a sidewalk, as she mentioned, and as Mr. Harlicker also mentioned, you can get a sidewalk in there. You could. Our point is, where does the sidewalk go if you put a sidewalk there right now? If we build a sidewalk, it's going to be dead-ended about, I don't know how long this site is, 900 feet, 800 feet. And it can't continue past there because there's nowhere to go. As you go past that site, you reach, depending on which way you go, you reach 2 bridges. You either go, and neither one of those bridges, Coon Rapids Boulevard or the overpass for East River Road, are built to accommodate a sidewalk. There's not room for a sidewalk there. So the sidewalk can't go anywhere. You have an unsafe situation. Somebody goes to the end of the sidewalk, nowhere to go. So, yes, a sidewalk could be installed. We don't think there should be one. And our site would have a single entrance point from Vale Street. Nobody's going to go to a self-storage unit on foot. It just doesn't make sense. So those points, you know, if you look only at the sidewalk situation, we don't qualify. If you look at, you know, what the spirit of the ordinance is, you know, I guess that's your call. But we think it's a good use for the site. Access being what it is, I don't know what else is gonna go there. Questions?
No? Thank you very much. Anyone else for the public hearing? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Commission,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey.
well, I don't know what else is gonna go there either. I'll just answer that right off the bat. It's zoned industrial. So that's a stopper, but it seems to me that the big stopper is the River Rapids Overlay District, and as it relates to the comprehensive plan on paper right now. I see no objection to the site plan. I think it's stellar, really. You've addressed a lot of the issues. But there is that stopper. And so I'm not sure exactly where to go with it. All food for thought. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Well,
Commissioner Stevens.
it's hard because, yes, I've lived in Coon Rapids for 30-plus years, and I've gone by there and have seen it empty. But 2 years ago, when I was sitting here, we denied. I can't, in good conscience, right now, go forward and say, yours is better than theirs, because they had a great plan too. We have a comp plan for a reason. We work hard on our comp plan. If I get on my soapbox, you know, this is 11 years worth of work that I've been here and trying to hold down what this city has brought forward to us. The council, over the years, this is what they have thought would be the best plan for the city. We can only look at usage, land usage. That's all we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to look at how many employees they employ, how much money it's going to bring into the city. That's not our goal. Our goal is to look at the land use and land use only. That's our job. Now, the city can override us, the city council. That's their job. But right now, we denied them. Our comp plan hasn't changed. Yes, it is a stellar, beautiful. I would love to see that. But that's not what our comp plan says. So because of that, and 2 years ago, I'm gonna have to deny it again, just because of, unless we change the comp plan, which we just had a meeting on last month, and it stayed the same. So, I hate to deny it because it is beautiful, but I can't in good conscience go forward since we denied it 2 years ago. So.
Thank you. Commission. Anyone wish to make a motion?
I do.
Commissioner Stevens.
In planning case 18-18, as a commission, I deny the request for the conditional use permit for the self-storage facility based on the findings that were already presented earlier this evening.
Second.
Motion by Stevens, second by Casey. Any further discussion?
As a point of clarification, Mr. Chair, when we vote on this motion, and I vote, will be a vote to deny the application. Is that correct?
That's correct. Excuse me, yes. The motion is to deny the request for the conditional use permit. So voting aye would be to affirm the denial.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The Decision by the planning commission is to deny the request for a conditional use permit. This decision can be appealed to the city council within 10 days if someone chooses to do so.
Chair, maybe ask a question?
Well, there's not really questions at this time. Mr. Harlicker, our next case, planning case 18-18, a site plan for a self-storage facility at Vale Street and Coon Rapids Boulevard Green Partnership.
Again, this is a request for a site plan approval. We went over most of this at the beginning of this discussion. Reviewed the facility, the buildings, architecture. The building will be staffed at the office, which is located here, 9 to 5. Facility is proposed to be open to renters, I guess you'd call them, 24-hour access. There will be some exterior lighting, security lighting. The gate will require a code to get in. We talked about the privacy fence and the vinyl coating. If you want to go through the standards required for site plan approval, section 304.8. The first one is be compatible with surrounding land uses. The proposed site plan is not compatible with the surrounding land uses as we discussed with the conditional use permit. However, there is the railroad tracks and apartments on the other side of the railroad tracks that this would be compatible with. Preserve existing natural features, that's not applicable. There are no natural features to preserve. A safe and efficient circulation system, that's a yes. The drive aisles are sufficient width. You got one access off of Vale Street, and Vale Street and Coon Rapids Boulevard extension are sufficient to handle the traffic generated by this site. Not place excessive loads on local streets. Confirm to the city's plans for parks and trails. The city's long-range parks plan does show a trail connection from here along the side of Coon Rapids Boulevard and eventually extending to the south. That is in the current parks and trail plan. Conform to the city's goals and policies. No. The site plan is proposed to not conform to the city's goals and policies as it relates to the comprehensive plan and the River Rapids Overlay District. Is a project to achieve a maximum level of safety, convenience, and amenities. Staff does not believe it does. Fencing, lighting, intended only access do provide a level of security. However, the 24-hour nature of the facility creates security issues. Additional security measures would have to include cameras at the gates that are capable of photographs of the license plate and driver's face, cameras that are able to take photos, good photos at night in between the drive aisles of the buildings, and there are no amenities to the site plan. I did review the proposed use and site plan with representatives from the police department. Their concern was with the security and surveillance aspect of the business. There have been other facilities in the city that are of this nature that they do have a lot of break-ins on them because people get in there and nobody knows they're there. It doesn't meet Title 11, no variances are required. We reviewed the parking and access. We went over the landscaping. If we want to go over the River Rapids Overlay District design guidelines. First one, a two-story expression. There was an attempt to meet that criteria. In the past, dormers and gables have been acceptable means of meeting that criteria. Again, with this, the buildings are about 20 feet high to the peak. The tower on building 1 is about 29 feet. The gables and dormers on some of the buildings do provide the break in the facades, as well as an attempt to give it that two-story expression. That's difficult to achieve with these measures simply because the length of the building. They do work on smaller buildings such as convenience stores, but when you get these long, narrow buildings like this, it's very difficult to give that two-story expression. Building massing and facades, again, because of the lengths, some of them are broken up by the gables and dormers along here, and some of the other ones, but most of the facades are not. All the buildings have garage doors, service doors, you could call them loading doors too, facing Coon Rapids Boulevard, which is prohibited. Varied roof shapes, again, it's really, some of them are broken up with the gables, others are just long, straight, flat roof lines, except when you get to the ends of the building. Focal features, just the one building at the end of the site by the drainage ponds has a feature, architectural feature on the end. None of the other buildings do. There might have been an opportunity for some of these other buildings, like for instance 10, and maybe this one too, because it does stick out, to provide that type of feature. Canopies are not applicable. Building materials, again, requires 30%. The facades facing the street must be brick, natural stone. The buildings do comply with that. Windows and doors are not applicable. Outdoor spaces, no outdoor seating, plazas, or similar areas are provided. Parking, 3 spaces are provided near the office, including 1 handicap spot, so parking is sufficient. Pedestrian bicycle access, again, the long-term Parks and Trails plan does have a sidewalk along here, along the length of the site. Urban design feature and amenities, no amenities are provided. Landscaping and screening, it does meet the required landscaping and screening. Lighting, they look for accent lighting, none is being proposed for this site, so it's not applicable. And finally, again, it's emphasized in another specific standard. Loading spaces, overhead doors, and service doors cannot face Coon Rapids Boulevard, and each of the buildings do have that. With that, staff is recommending denial of the site plan because the associated request for the conditional use permit was denied, and the site plans do not meet the development guidelines found in section 11-304.8 and 1003.11. The River Rapids Overlay District standards, as well as the general standards for site plan approval.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Commission, any questions? Mr. Rolliker at this time. All right, seeing none, we will open a public hearing in this case, planning case 18-18, a site plan for a self-storage facility at Vale Street and Coon Rapids Boulevard Green Partnership. Anyone wish to speak to the public hearing on this matter? Please try not to repeat anything that might have been said in earlier public hearings on the same case. Thank you.
Chair, Commissioners, thank you. Not to repeat, I just needed a point of clarity.
And give your name again, please, for the...
I'm sorry, Charlie Pfeffer, 7200 Hemlock Lane, Maple Grove, Minnesota, 55369. I apologize. In regards to the previous 2 years ago, an application, if there's someone that could provide me that resource, I don't recall ever signing a formal application or any of that, see an agenda item or anything for that request. So if it was a discussion item, that's one thing. If it was actually a full application, I think that should be considered differently. if someone could provide me that information, we would greatly appreciate it. That's all I have.
Chair Schwartz,
Mr.
if I could
Harlequin.
clarify that, it was a discussion, there was no formal application that Mayflower submitted.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this public hearing?
Al Taft, again. A couple of corrections, actually, there. The doors that face Coon Rapids Boulevard, not that you can see them, you can't see them, but none of them are overhead doors. They're service doors. As far as the two-story expressions, there are 3 buildings that have them, if I remember correctly. The one at the far west, the one on one side, the one at the far east on the opposite side, and number 3, because that one sticks out a little further than the others as the property line steps back. So they are there. There was a request by staff that a sidewalk be installed. We didn't show one on the site plan because of the points we made before. The developer would certainly install a sidewalk if required, but we disagree that it's a good idea. Questions?
Not at this time, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak at the public hearing? Last call for the public hearing. We'll close the public hearing. Commissioners.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stevenson.
I move that we deny the site plan and, I'm sorry, who's the case number, please?
1818.
1819.
1818.
1818.
Okay.
1818.
Second?
Motion by Stevenson, second by Stevens. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Schmoke.
there's just one piece of this, I think that is just kind of causing me to pause, because I think there seems to be a lot of conversation about it, and it would be nice if there could be a little bit more clarification around it. The sidewalk issue, I do have to agree in terms of, it seems to me to be quite interesting that we would consider a sidewalk there that does take it to where, right? And I do worry about that dead end of that sidewalk in terms of would it promote people to use that sidewalk, come to an area where there's no safe crosswalk to get across maybe to another side, where I don't know if there is another sidewalk or anything there, but it just doesn't seem like that's a part of, that should be an argument for this particular site plan. It just does seem to me, I think that their best interest, or they're taking the safety into consideration, and I really kind of feel like the sidewalk should be a moot point on this. I can see some of the other issues as you raised and so forth. This is really a tough one. But I know there's been a lot of conversation around that sidewalk, and I just feel like it should be it should be lessened in terms of its importance relative to the site plan and to the other.
Commissioner Schmoke, Chair Schwartz. The way the engineering has handled situations like this in the past is we want the site plan shown on the sidewalk shown on the site plan, but they have accepted an escrow or cash. Instead of them installing it, they provide cash for future installation of the sidewalk when it's part of a larger extended project, so it doesn't just stop in the middle of nowhere.
Thanks for clarifying.
And Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stevenson.
I want to say that I did not vote against the last plan, or the last speed end run because of the sidewalk. I didn't make this motion because of the sidewalk. I think that a sidewalk connection to a self-storage facility is not a paramount concern. I would have been concerned if this project would have obstructed the proposed trail path that's going to go along the same way, and that, to my mind, mitigates some of the concerns about a dead end. If this was a facility that at all would be serviced by a sidewalk, I wouldn't be as concerned about the dead end because there is a plan to get a trail through there. But I share your view that talking about a sidewalk to a self-storage facility is not the issue here. For me, it's not consistent with the overlay district, and I thought Commissioner Stevens said it quite clearly, that our job is to look at land use. You know, I didn't vote against it because, although I was on the commission 2 years ago, and I recall when we were discussing the other thing, it did not become an application, but I do recall discussing it. But I didn't vote against the conditional use permit because of what happened 2 years ago. I voted against it because it's not consistent with the overlay district. The land use is not consistent with the comp plan, which, as Commissioner Stevens pointed out, was just reapproved within a matter of weeks. And I made the motion on the site plan because without the conditional use permit, I think the site plan is a moot point. So if that provides some clarity to the applicant as to what I was thinking when I voted the way I voted and the way I'm about to vote, hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Heikle?
I also agree with the two commissioners, Stevenson and Stevens, that our job is to consider what's before us, and the land use does not meet the plan, and for that reason, I too would vote against it.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes to deny the site plan. This is a decision by the Planning Commission and can be appealed to the City Council within 10 days if anyone chooses to do so. Thank you. And moving on to other business. Since this is Commissioner Stevens' last meeting, I'd like to thank her for her many years of service to the commission.
Thank you.
11, you said it, 11?
Thank you.
And Mr. Harlicker, anything else you have on the road? Other business?
That was it. I'd like to thank you also for the dedication and service. You've been on the commission since 2008, so a month short of 10 years. Wish you well, and
Thank you.
we'll go from here.
Yeah, thank you. I'll miss it, that's for sure.
Well, we'll certainly miss you.
My spunk, and my bicycles.
Your oversight of bicycles.
Correct, yes.
We'll carry on.
Good, somebody should.
I know.
All right. Anybody else have anything under other business? Hearing none. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Stevenson, second by Stevens. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.